Well, I don't know about you, but I see nothing, so yeah.
I see the lights.
Yes. Anyway, well, thank you. Thank you especially to you, Ilse, because you still don't know the people that are sitting here. I'm going to introduce them, but we have the honor to have the director of this super fantastic film, and I really want to thank her since we all have it like all these emotions so fresh after the film. So thank you. So I'm very pleased to moderate this film, and I'm just going to be the moderator. I really hope that this is a conversation among the speakers, but also with you. We have then the honor to be surrounded by Ilse Burkowska Jacobsen. Yes, she is the director of My Favorite War. We have Kaspar Banek.
Me.
Exactly, that's him, and he is a member of Progressive. Thank you. And he is also an art curator. And we also have Laura Lopez. She is a Spanish MP from the Catalan Greens, Catalunya en Comú, Esquerra Verda, and we also have an online audience that we're not even seeing, but that is somewhere there. And I know that somehow the staff is going to also take care that this online audience is involved in our conversation. So I just want to be very brief and have a bit of an introduction because, I mean, this super fantastic film tells us something very important, and we're going to speak about all these messages that Ilse wants to give us, but I think that also underlines the importance of acknowledging our history. And you know, some taking care about it through what we call the political memory, because underlying and taking care of our history and acknowledging our history help us to healing trauma. Also, it brings justice and it helps us understand the present and, of course, construct the future. I just want to also bring a little bit of my personal or thoughts in this acknowledging the history. I come from a country that was also under a totalitarian regime. I come from Spain, for those that don't know me. By the way, sorry, I introduced the speakers, but I didn't introduce myself. My name is Mar, and I'm the Secretary General of the European Greens. And I am Spanish, and I come from a country that was under a dictatorship for 40 years, a fascist dictatorship. And on the 5th of August of the 39, just when the civil war ended, Franco and his regime killed 13 women that were trying to organize themselves politically. And they have been known as the 13 Roses afterwards. One of them, a 20-year-old Julia Conesa, wrote shortly before she was shot, "May my name never be erased from history." And throughout the 40 years of dictatorship, her name was not only erased, but was also mocked. And the first law for political memory in Spain came in 2007, 30 years after the first democratic elections, and of course 40 years of dictatorship plus 30 years of democracy, and only in 2007 we had the first law. We're going to discuss also with the speakers what's the story in Latvia, and I also invite you to maybe think about your own countries if you want to contribute to the discussion. So I think that in Europe, it's now a shared space of freedoms and rights. Unfortunately, in many corners of Europe, there has been barbarism and a lot of suffering until very recently. And this film is showing that sad part of our history. But I think that Europe has been in a crossroad between two totalitarisms, Nazism and Stalinism, and to become at peace with us, I really believe that we need to deal with our past as a continent, because dealing with the past is a debt that we owe to the victims, because it's also a way of, as I said before, help us of understanding who we are and who we want to be, and also for democratic hygiene. I think that that's what the political memory does, and I think that this is also exactly what this film is doing from a cultural approach, exactly contributing to building on this political memory as an instrument to help to deal with ourselves. And said that, I just want to, dig into a bit more this fantastic film, and I'm going to start asking Ilse a bit of her to comment. So you deal with a lot of aspects in this film. We've had a bit of an exchange of, okay, what's the message that we want to do? And there was a lot of doubts, yeah? She speaks about, well, we could comment from a feminist perspective, from an environmental perspective. So there's so many aspects that I'm also going to invite her to maybe reflect if she wants. But I think that the overall message is, okay, this is a path towards liberation for Latvia. And yeah, I want you to maybe reflect a little bit on this overall path towards liberation, but also, if you want, on other aspects of the film that you may find that the audience will find interesting.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, as I told to you when we prepared for this conversation, I could have been choosing some other aspects, like my artist Sven, who said, "Oh, and then you should put when did you get your first period in this film?" And I said, oh, maybe not. And kind of choose the feministic perspective and how to tell it. And I understood, yeah, awakening period, which we call awakening period at the end of 80s. That was actually the first time I realized the Latvian women came into politics and how I look up to them and how it influenced our identity to really go from those pioneers who just repeat phrases served to you to say something what you really mean, because there were new kind of politicians which came onto public arena and they were honest in their opinions. And it could be another story, of course, but there is in this subject for this theme today, healing of trauma, and I think that was maybe the main motivation for me when I started on it, that in many Latvian families, and mine is very typical Latvian family, we have so many stories where you just turn from one corner to other and you have so many relatives, and everybody has some kind of pain of the experience in the past. And I thought that I want to follow mainly this story from the 80s, which I remember best, to the liberation, because I wanted to make a story kind of for the international audience that, yes, we are here. It is like Latvians, we say we have repeated it 1,022 times, but I still know that where is our place in the food chain in European family, and you often mix where is Latvian, Lithuanian. So I felt it doesn't hurt to repeat it one more time.
That's very nice. Kaspar, do you also have this memory about this awakening, and you can share it with us?
One. Does it work? Yeah. I have problems with history when it's told by grown-ups using a voice of a child. I think it takes away some kind of responsibility for digging deeper. And I really had this kind of feeling like that, yes, there are moments I recognize, definitely. But at the same time, I strongly remember also this almost surreal perception of reality which is actually not real, or that's what Russian cultural theorist Alexei Yurchak writes about, that it was and it was not. That on one hand you are taking part in this pioneers meeting, but at the same time you know that it's not really for real. Or you can, what is not existing there are the constant political jokes and anecdotes Soviet people were laughing about in every birthday party, you know. And everybody knew at least 3 or 4 really good political jokes. I think the most beautiful is that a Soviet citizen says to the son, good morning, son, thank you for this perfect day, just like we say thank you to party, and then in the midday we say, hello, son. Sorry, that's not the sun. It's the sun is saying, hello, party, thank you for being here, and then thank you for being in the midday, and then the sun is already going down and says, I don't give a shit, I'm in the West now, you know? And this kind of feeling was also there in Soviet Latvia, and this is like, I feel it's more like Stalin's, up to Stalin's death, probably that was the atmosphere in Latvia, but that's definitely not my childhood. My parents were completely anti-Soviet, and when I'm now during the Ukrainian war scrolling down social media, I think, oh, it's like my dad listening to a Voice of America. He came home always after the university, where he was university professor, and then he spent 4 hours just listening radio stations, Western. That's like nowadays we are scrolling down social medias or reading what's going on. And that we spoke, in our family, we spoke about everything. So I can't share that story, I'm sorry.
Okay, but there you have a different perspective from someone that would say is share a generational...
We do share, no? I'm like, your movie starts with 1974, right?
You're asking how old I am?
No, how this hero in the movie. I think it started with 1974, right?
Yes.
Okay, mine is 1970. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So he has mentioned a bit of this.
Yeah, talk or not to talk about those things. No, for us it was very clear not mention things outside the family, and especially this, which I emphasized in the film. Don't speak about grandfather. Don't say that he was in Siberia. You will get in trouble. And about Voice of America, it was very funny. At school, I realized first time that others are listening to it too after this boiling house exploded, because then somebody said, "Oh, Voice of America told it." And then suddenly I understood who was kind of my side in the class. So if you, I knew that my grandfather listened to it, not mom, because my neighbor, he was working in KGB. He wasn't any, hidden KGB person. He was really working there. And so mom didn't listen to it. It was grandfather in the country house. And Ilga's father did, as I knew, she was my friend. But then suddenly after this house exploded, then I got to know who else's parents listened to Voice of America. And you're from Riga, aren't you?
I'm from Riga, yeah.
Yeah, and it's quite different.
I can imagine, yeah.
Because in Riga, I guess you were a bit less afraid.
And in village, everybody sees everybody, no? My granny used to say, it's very important in the village which direction you go down the street in the morning. That's whether you come from home or to home,
Ah, walk of shame.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So what to add to that? I can't make funny film because I'm not funny person. So you can just explore yourself and your own emotions in the way how you feel. And I grew up as a depressed child of depressed mother, so that's why I make film in this mood. That's the honest answer.
It's a fantastic film, Ilse. I think that we have very much enjoyed it. But he has mentioned, about having the child as the storyteller. But tell us a bit why you chose this format of animated, because I personally find it very nice. Also, this combination. I really, really liked it. But is there a reason behind?
Some reasons. Like the episode where young people are becoming members of the pioneer organization. I knew what was in the Latvian State Archive of the Kinofoto document archives and the cinematographers archive or the State Archive of films. There are just happy children and happy ceremony of becoming a pioneer. And it's not how I felt. I felt it was stiffness, there was fear, there was this feeling of obligation, of suppression, and it was very serious to say your name loud and to promise something and come with this oath. And I had a fantastic teacher. She was a really convinced communist. She's one of a million. She believed to the communist idea until the very bitter end. She was one of the only one in the little region, Saldus town, who believed in the communism and supported Alfred Rubiks when the coup against Gorbachev came. So she made one-person cell of the true communists in 1991. So that was why we were so drilled. And I don't have a problem to stand for this ceremony because she was very serious about who we are becoming in this moment. So I had to make an animation because I knew that archive will not help me with my emotional memory.
Okay, just to see how different lives could be in Soviet Union, I will tell about my that day of becoming a pioneer. It happened nowadays, this museum is called Museum of Occupation. Back then, that was called the Museum of Red Latvian Riflemen. And that's in Old Town. And then my mother picked me up from the museum and said, now we will go to the Cafe Luna. And we went to Luna, and she said, now forget about that and relax, and you will get for the first time ice cream with Riga black balsams instead of chocolate. And I still remember that because she really tried to, how should I say, I grew up in a very middle-class family where my mother thought that actually a well-served dinner or to go to a cafe and have ice cream is a kind of resistance. And her resistance was completely different of that one. She was like, yes, I know, it was completely middle-class resistance to the system. And it was just like also in your film, those typical Latvian middle-class bookshelves. They were full with books. That was also, I can imagine your mom spent like 1/3 of her salary buying books. You know, I noticed these bookshelves, they were full. And then I think, all those song festivals where you have, no idea, 60,000 singers. Where are they in that film? Or Latvian poetry books were published in around 100 and 150,000 circulation. And they were not political books, they were love poetry, they were romantic, pagan way of seeing the Latvian nature, and people were buying them, and they were singing them, and they were quoting them, and it was also there. That cultural life was also there, and they were pretty nationalistic. It was really hating Russians. That hate is still here. We don't want to admit that there are other nationalities living in our country who have grown up here, who are sharing similar memories, but from other perspective. So, yeah, but I do understand what you are talking about as well, this kind of...
Kaspar, and those books, and they were fully accessible to everybody, like very easily accessible?
100,000...
It depends what kind of books, because, that's one of my kind of fun moments today when I look at the old books printed in Soviet time, and I mean 40-year-old books or something like that, and then there is marks in the books in how many prints they were made, and those numbers are insane for nowadays.
Insane, 150,000 for a poetry book. Imagine
and children books and 200,000 and everything. And when you compare to the population, then you just look how insane big numbers there are for those books. That's true, but I think I just have to think what was the moments of those resistance, because of course they existed all the time in some small drops of everyday life.
Vysotsky, for example, all those home copied music recordings done from one tape recorder to the other at home, illegally, you know, and everybody was in summer houses in Jūrmala or in Saukrasti. Everybody was listening that music really loud, although everybody knew that you couldn't buy that in a shop.
Everybody was not in the summer house. Everybody was raised in the country and sent to your grandparents to pick your garden and take hay to the cows and so on.
Terrible. I remember that.
Country people
that
versus town people.
Hay dust behind your neck here.
Never holiday for a country children.
And it was like 30-degree plus, and you had to put on your shirt because your granny didn't admit to have a lunch break during hay harvest with topless, so to say. Yeah.
I mean, I think that this is a very interesting conversation. I mean, I'm sure there is other Latvians in the public that may want to also. We're supposed to have a Q&A at the end, but why not have a common conversation? I'm sorry now, Katja, for kind of messing up, but if someone would like to also intervene, because this is we didn't prepare that. That's a very different perspective of what we are kind of discussing, and I think it's very interesting. So maybe also you're welcome to contribute. Let me just ask Laura. Do you think that I mean, we obviously did not experience that, but I'm sure that. Do you have an opinion over if this was the regime was also felt in a different way in other countries, like for example in Spain, from the most urban, let's say, perspective to the.
Surely, Mar. You know, my grandparents came from Galicia. Galicia, it's at just the other way from where I live right now. And they come to Catalonia because there was not job in Galicia, as many people do that. And you see the difference between how people there in Catalonia lives the same period and how people who came from Andalusia, you know, Galicia, as my grandparents, see the same thing. And not also this, but also my grandparents went to a very small village, and then I grew up and I didn't live anymore in that village. I go to the city, and then you speak with other people how their parents or maybe grandparents, if possible, see the same period. And it's the same. It's very different how people live the same reality when you live in a small village or when you are exposed to a different reality in a city. Do you think the same, Mar?
Yes. But maybe, can I then pose you a question, both of you? And what, now you have very different perspectives or experiences, but what about today? Do you think that these different perspectives have been acknowledged? What has Latvia done with, digesting its past from a more rural, or not rural, but I mean, from this approach, I wouldn't want to put a label because I don't know, I'm not Latvia, so but from this approach and for a more urban approach that you mentioned, where are we today? Is there a shared opinion about acknowledging what happened?
Oh, well, my impression, because I can't say that I'm a good expert of current Latvia as a society today, since I live in two countries at once. My impression is that we hadn't digested the past with the KGB, because the archives are still in Russia, and we haven't been open about who has been an agent and who not, and we have been trying to deal with this question like a hot potato, throwing it back and forth, and just very few people have come out and said, yes, I was an agent or I was involved, and so. And I think that Latvians are avoiding conflicts on ideology very much because we haven't any high-level culture for discussing opinions. We are getting very quickly into personal accusations and not dealing very well just dialogue about opinions. I think we need still education of making political discussions and dealing with it. So I guess when the discussions about this past starts, people get very quickly personal and feel sorrow or aggression or something, and not getting over it in the good way. But maybe I'm very wrong. I think that, by my opinion, there are two little pieces of art dealing with it too. But when I made film, I was taken by a Latvian film magazine to meet our author, a Latvian writer, Nora Ikstena, and she has a book which is translated in many languages about same kind of story. It's called The Soviet Milk in the English, and she said to me, you know, each time when I see this archives of the Baltic Way, which you use in your film, I'm ready to vomit. It's overused. and she said that she is very afraid of those exaggerated stories about freedom. But she said, in my film, in this, my favorite word, it's okay. I could watch it. And so for some, so that was just a extra point. But yeah, I think we haven't come over it completely, and we are still weak in making dialogue with different populations and nationalities. I was very careful to say Russians in my film, because very often we by that mean Russian-speaking people, and by that we maybe not mean Russians as nationality, we mainly mean the power from the Russian side coming in and doing it. So I used in my voiceover very often Soviets, because it was the Soviet power who did it, and we were into it as well. And the Soviet army and not Russian army, and so. Yeah, my point back is that we need still to educate us in the culture of dialogue.
Kaspar, what do you think?
I think as probably many of us here in Eastern Europe right now we have daily discussions about the war in Ukraine, about whether Russia will ever change, whether Russia has ever gone through what Germany calls Vergangenheitsbewältigung, or reflection on the past. And then I suddenly had this kind of feeling, now, if Russia would like to deal with its past, it has to do twice as much. On one hand, first of all, the Soviet regime, and secondly, then the Putin's regime. And then there rang the bell where I thought, okay, actually the same goes also to Latvia, because we have to remember that since 1934, just like in Spain, but okay, it wasn't a Nazi or fascist regime, but we also had an authoritarian regime. The parliament wasn't theirs. We had prime minister and president in one person, and it was never discussed after 1990, so to say. Or there is still this nice, good Ulmaņlaiki, or the times of President Ulmanis, who actually created this kind of binary mentality of Latvian nation, so to say, the urban decadence and the true hardworking Latvian farmers, on whose shoulders the wealth of Latvian state is built. But actually what Latvian farmers did, how Latvia got out from the economic crisis in the 30s, were actually supplying Nazi Germany with butter and bacon when Nazi Germany started to the armament and was collecting, so to say, tinned food to get ready for the war. It's also like a part of this kind of mentality of hardworking farmers as true Latvians, you know. So I think that's it's worth to keep in mind, because right now sorry, just quickly, where I feel very uncomfortably at the moment, that when we start to position ourselves against Putin's Russia, suddenly we also hear very evil voices which were not there or were not so loud before, where suddenly you see this in. I do understand the demonstration where there are lots of Latvians who would prefer to the monument to the victors of the Second World War to be taken down. But then suddenly you see that there are people in that demonstration wearing a T-shirt saying it's Latvian country, Latvian rules, you know, all that kind of thing. And where we need to think twice about the historical, about the past, and to think how we can be truly European and open-minded.
I just had to add that it was very idolized, this rule of one man who led Latvia from 1934, very, very idolized in the generation of our grandparents. And we, in my childhood in 70s, we grew up with this very shiny picture of that period because, of course, it was pre-war period, it was pre-occupation period, and that was the time when our grandparents were young. And also, if we look at those Soviet people, post-Soviet people in Latvia now longing back to the Soviet times, they are saying, oh, that's the time of their youth. Everything was much more nicer when you were young. You had more energy and you didn't have any pain in your back. And those things are a bit combined, and we have to discuss, of course, it was a fairy tale about the sugar, which we needed as an energy to believe in the free country. I'm discussing it quite often. This idealized Republic of Latvia before 1940 Soviet occupation, that it was kind of the spoon of sugar motivating people in 80s.
4 spoons of sugar.
Yeah,
that's what President Ulman said.
No.
But we have 4 factories of sugar in Latvia, so you have to add 4 spoons of sugar when you drink
I forgot about them, but it was kind of their idealization was this sweet lie in the 80s or 70s, but people needed to believe that it is possible to have your own country. And so that's a bit problematic about that time, how somebody says, that's good that they idolized it. And now I say, but okay, we have grown up now. Let's discuss and look at facts, what happened. And one of the films I remember, which is a bit interesting from the Soviet time, showing that anything wasn't ideal. And when you talk about your mother and saying about her resistance, it was funny that my mother, she pointed when we watched this film, the title is The Early Rust. Mm-hmm. And there is in the beginning, people struggling, unemployed, trying to get work in this pre-occupation period. And she said, remember, it wasn't that easy in that time either. So it is kind of meta reaction that don't idolize. But of course, my mother, she was very much for the free Latvia, as I can say, from all the time. But I think she tried to make a realistic picture of that sweet time too, from the experience. Not believing, of course, all what revolutionary people said. We had a very funny story. I never got a phone, like home phone in the flat where we lived in the Soviet house. And it was because when we moved in there, you had to write yourself in the line, and my mother did. And the people who had phones or the number of phone line from previously, they got phone. So when I needed to call someone, I had to go to the neighbor to make a call. And we were in this line, and then the city said, we need a bigger house for the telegraph to make those phone connections. It has to be bigger. And where the house is placed, we can't expand it because nearby, but a postal house is a private house. There lives a lady, and she was previously revolutionary. She has seen Lenin in her youth, and she is not going to move. So she had the power in the 80s because she has seen Lenin in the 20s. And they had to wait until she died to expand the building for the postal house in Saldus. And when she died, then the project was too old. So all 11 years while I lived there, we never get to the phone.
Yeah, you never had a landline.
Just anecdote.
Oh my God. I have to say that I wonder if this conversation between Caspar and Ilse would be different if their kids or grandkids would be having this conversation, in the sense of not talking about my parents or my grandfathers, who are like someone that, you know, very close to us, but if we, in 2 generations, we're going to have a different conversation. Because for what you say, I mean, people still get very personal. I think that then probably the healing hasn't fully happened. I'm going to ask also you, Laura, if you believe that the healing has happened in Spain. But I'm also going to invite you. We wanted also to have a German person in the debate. We just didn't manage to finally. But you are from many corners in Europe, and I'm pretty sure that you can also contribute from with some of the experience from your different countries. So again, I can't see anybody, but yeah, if you want also to contribute, there is going to be a microphone. So, but Laura, do you think that in a country like Spain, we would find ourselves in a situation similar to what they were saying? Like Ilse says, it gets pretty personal when. So, what do you think?
I really get this point of Isla, because I think that in Spain we have a little bit the same problem, but not only because we went personal, that too, because in the same parliament, people's known politics, important politics, not like me, they go personal in public, not only in discussions that you can have with friends. But I think that it's not only the problem, that unique problem that we have in Spain. I think that we have another that maybe it's worse, because we are not told in school of how to think, how to question things. And then when you grow up as an adult, if you happen to be interested in politics, you choose maybe one political party, and then in the better cases, you just repeat while the political party says. Don't worry. And I think that it's very, well, thank you. That's very worrying, because there is no a truly discussion. It's more or less the same.
Yes, has not been a truly discussion. Yes, that's fully right.
I think there's a difference between Spain and Latvia, in the sense that, as in the film, there was this, don't make us take the sides. And Latvians are kind of like playing the game that they were not participating, they were made to take the sides. While in Spain, there were really this kind of, you made the decision yourself, either you are going right or you go left, you know? And both sides were killing. And so this kind of healing process is closer to the reality, to my mind, that people understand there was a conflict. While in Latvia, people have this kind of self-victimization thing, that we are not guilty, actually. The highest peak of the guilt is collaboration, kind of like. But it was also, you know, occupation was so long, it took 50 years, so sooner or later you somehow make the move, just, you know, because kids have to go to the university. Who will judge? You know, and then it's kind of, and right now it's always the others. The others are the guilty ones. The Soviets, the Russians, the Germans, Churchill who didn't come and help our partisans in the forest, you know? And we are just these kind of passive victims. And that's even, I think it's even worse because it's neither hot nor cold.
It's quite similar because I think in Spain, a very bad consequence of not had a really collective memory. Because there have been, as Mark have said before, very little in that aspect. So I think a consequence is we are all impregnated from values, from ways of thinking that came from the dictatorship. But we are not, or maybe most people are not conscious. And then maybe they not choose to go in a right-wing party, but they happens to be there. And maybe they are believing they are doing a thing that it's different. And that, I think it's a consequence that all the bad things that happen has not been healing yet. So more or less the same, I think.
I think, there is someone that wants to contribute. I don't see anything, so please stand up and just...
Can I stand up?
Yeah.
Is that on? Oh, yeah, it is. Thank you. My name's Elise Benjamin. I'm from the Green Party of England and Wales. I grew up in the UK. All my family fled persecution in the 19th century from Latvia. My great-grandmother was from Riga. From the Ukraine, my grandfather was Ukrainian. From Germany and from Poland. So I grew up knowing, I'm old enough to have grown up through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s with communism, with the USSR, with the threat of nuclear war when I was at school, all of that, but with more awareness, one, because I grew up in London, which would have been a target for the Soviets, but also because of my family heritage. What I'm seeing unfold in the UK at the moment, there are certain elements on the left who just have no concept of what it was like to live under Soviet occupation. Absolutely no concept. And they are believing Putin. They are saying that Putin is denazifying Ukraine, which is so deeply offensive, but very worrying because they're very lazy. And I think what I really want to say is I want people here who aren't from the UK to understand that in I think the countries that weren't occupied, because that's what it was, have people who are on the left who should know better and who do not understand what Putin wants, what Putin is trying to recreate, and how wrong he is to do what he's doing in Ukraine at the moment, and how frightening I think it is that he obviously has eyes on other places as well. So I want to say, Ilse, thank you for this film. I'm going to disagree with Kaspers. I think from the perspective of a child makes it more approachable for people to watch and to understand, because when it impacts on a child, it has a stronger message. And can we please have this as compulsory watching in the UK, especially on the left? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before, can I ask maybe the technicians if you can just, bring in the lights and I know that it's not going to be so like this scene. It's very uncomfortable for us because we don't see is it a bit better? Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I want a bit continue of your thought about victimization of ourselves. I'm often telling what for me is the Homo Sovieticus. It is this Latin expression of the Soviet person. Who is that person? And for me, that is a person who is not taking a stand. The person who is passive, and that is a person who believes that somebody else will take responsibility and that you don't have to take an active position in your life, that you still believe in this authoritarian ruler who will decide over you. So I think that is the one of the reasons about current political culture, because there are still people wanting to get finished or made answers from somebody else to tell them what to do, because that's a responsibility in your life. You have to decide by yourself for which party are you going to vote and why, what's your motivation, and taking those responsibilities because you have to think. And I think that's the continuance of this position of victimization and looking for outside influences and not taking, okay, that was me. But I just want to tell about this position of child. I was yesterday in Stockholm, and the film was shown in the conference for Eastern European and Baltic Studies, and it was a very interesting discussion with scientists who are researchers of the politics and the issue of region. And there were many people from Poland and Germany, and they said it's so interesting how children know by the intuition that you will not speak about things outside your home, because the experience was the same for people from Eastern Germany, from Poland, that you just know what will not be mentioned outside the house. And I think that's something you need years to overcome, in my case, to understand when will you be brave and not deal with this, what somebody else will say about me. But thank you for your comment. And I just wanted to add that it's a very dual situation when you are a young person, and sometimes you feel like in my case, you have an energy and you want things to happen. You want things to be fun at school, and you want to organize something. And I mean not the pioneer happenings and not the ideological things to be done in school, but you have your pals, you have your mates, and they want something fun. And that's not in the film, but of course I was seeking for this position of being leader, because in my somehow in personality I'm a director. I wanted to organize things. I wanted to have those funny happenings outside the school too. And you were just seeing pictures when Ilga is talking about suicide. There is, you know, those fun things we had at school. I wanted her with a smiley face so you could see that we were having those gatherings at school, and somebody had to organize. You need ideas. And for that, actually, in my time, you needed, again, like my father in the 70s, you needed this permission kind of from the ideological rulers of the school to be able to have a position to be a director for the happenings at school.
Thank you. I have like several things. I don't know which track to get. On the one side, I have this reflection about this Homo Sovieticus and this victimization. And I would like maybe to also extend this conversation to you. Westerners, we always think, okay, East is different, or at least within the Greens, we also have, okay, you all know that the Greens are not super successful in Eastern Europe yet, and I was wondering also if this plays a role in the definition of post-Soviet countries, and maybe invite to the public also to reflect on this. This is an aspect that I would like to touch. I really think that I would like to comment on how can we link what we've seen today and the current situation. I mean, I've also, this is the second path that I would like to take, and I'm going to ask our speakers to reflect, and then this third aspect of organizing. But let me just first go to the first one, and maybe someone in the public wants to reflect. Is it, yeah, I see a lot of people down there, so up there, so does it has to an impact, yeah, being a former Soviet republic, and in how today we are facing our democracies and the way we vote, or the messages that we want to hear, or who wants to say something? Hold on, because they have been, here, sorry,
microphone.
because I'll give you the floor later, yeah.
Hello? Does this work? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mina Jack. Now, I don't come from a post-Soviet space, but from a post-colonial space in Malta. So it's a bit different. But I do spend some time thinking about generational trauma as well, colonialism. In my family, there's like the secrets, the burnt letters, these kind of whispers you hear. So it's always, I'm kind of drawn to this kind of art that explores also the generational issues and perhaps sometimes the dissonance between different parts of the family, which is what I see in my own. Something I think a lot about as well is the historical amnesia, and I've read about this through the way Italy does not teach about its colonial past. And I went specifically searching for that because my grandfather was one of the fascists in Libya, so of course that then, however, an amnesia that comes through the family, and it was never spoken about really what he was doing in Libya. So obviously memory is incomplete. Memory is incomplete because it's impacted by this generational or historical amnesia, but also because that's the way we operate. And so looking at this film, I mean, besides the conversations with Ilga, I was wondering what other conversations had to be had in order to build the scenes, in order to build that world, because actually acknowledging that, of course, memory, and especially our memory in childhood, where maybe you're not keeping diaries or photos like this, is incomplete. So these are kind of questions that came up directly in response to the film, but in response to the conversation, and in response to something I've been thinking about a lot in the past 3 weeks. I've been trying to understand the role of like conflict resolution centers or truth and reconciliation commissions within European states as well, in order to deal with colonial pasts and histories, for example. And I was wondering if I could ask the politicians on the panel, what is the Greens' role in setting up similar sort of conflict resolution practices in order to kind of tackle the problems under the surface, so to really go to the roots of some of the causes of the conflicts that we are also having in our societies nowadays. Because, for example, in Malta, it is for sure that the colonialism has impacted heavily on our democratic system and our political system, which is very much, in many ways, a mirror of a British system. However, how can we do this? How can we take this role of mediating the difficult conversations that our societies need to have, where there's a resistance in even recognizing a problem in the first place, where there's a resistance to even talking about colonialism in the first place, especially in countries like Malta, where you'd say, oh, but it wasn't that bad as somewhere else, right? And there's always that implication, like, we're not as bad as someone else, or we're not as involved as someone else. So even, be it on the post-colonial side, like Malta, or be it on the colonizer side, like Italy, there's always going to be some sort of comparison in order to kind of sidestep out of conversations that have needed to happen years ago. And my fear, as I guess someone born in the 90s and someone who was not able to have conversations with my own grandparents to dive deeper into these topics, is, of course, generationally, what are we losing? And in that loss, what will then be repeated without these conversations actually happening that dive deep into the nuances and really allow us to reflect on what multiple levels of conflicts have been shaping Europe as it is today.
Thank you, Mina Jack. I will ask this conversation to Laura later, but I would like to take also one contribution from the very end. There was someone also? No? Well, then to Vesna, who also asked for the floor.
Thank you. You have here a small Balkan fan club. being born, and yeah, it touches a lot because for us it was very recent, not really in 70s, but a bit later on. But what I would like to reflect on what Mar was asking a bit from following the Eastern Europe. I think that one of the most important things is that the one-party system never stopped existing in minds of lots of people, but multi-party system that we have, which we took as sign of democracy, just means that there's more parties competing to become one and only party. And that means that the democratic system of going to elections and having a choice, it doesn't mean that the ones you elect will cooperate and find compromises and consensus and work together, but it's always like who wins the most, takes it all. I mean, not in a sense of electoral system, but in a sense of I'm in power now, all of you wait your turn 4 years from now and maybe you get in power then, and then we see how it works. So like this notion of one-party system was demolished in 90s in most of the countries, but not really. It was demolished in a legal sense, not in legitimate sense in that sense. But what I would like to also ask Ilse is, how do you stay cold-blooded while making this movie and talking about it? Because I think that while we commented on the movie, it already got too emotional to talk about it. And then if you want to have really a society debate and talk to your parents and talk to your parents who experienced all of this, it's almost impossible to kind of widespread it. And it's just, I'm just really impressed by your ability personally to sit there, talk about the movie, which is an intimate history of the family as well, and then try to apply it to the whole society as a science, while not breaking to tears, which we all did here.
Thank you. I'm crying a bit now because you brought up a memory when I started to write a script, and that was really hard. My mom died in 2007, and it was hard because I was in the middle of making a film about her. She died almost immediately. I got financing for that film. And I had to deal with a very personal struggle because it was a portrait of her generation, the people who dreamt of free Latvia and how she struggled as a farmer in the 90s to build up this country which we have now. It was about how she was losing money, delivering milk and not getting paid and all that. And she got cancer and died very quickly. And I lived in Norway for many years, and I got financing from Norway to make this film about struggling Latvian peasant building up free Latvia. And that was in 2007, and I had an experience which was very strange. I had filmed my mother, and the film was very successful afterwards. But the thing was, I said to myself, while I was editing, I edited it alone for 3 months, and you have your mother at the editing board, and you look at her movements, you look at her words and voice intonation, and I said to myself, I will say goodbye when the film is finished. I can't allow myself to be emotional. So I made a steel of my heart, and I edited this film, and I said I got prizes in Latvia and Norway, and it got an international life afterwards. And then I said, now I have I said to myself, now I have to make something difficult again, to challenge myself. And I thought, what I haven't done before, it's animation. So let's make an animated feature film. And it was because when I was sorting my mother's books, I came up to this book where was the episode of falling cows from the plane. And I thought, it's only animation, I can make it, because in the feature film it would be too expensive to throw out cows from the plane, and I don't want to hurt any animals. And that was the episode telling about this captured victim situation of the peasants in Latvia. And it all started from that episode. And then I wrote an application in Norway to make a script, and then I got financing, and I got an artist grant in Norway for 2 years to work on this project. And I had a letter, which I showed to my family and said, you see, here is the proof that I'm insane, because only insane people get those artist stamps on you. And when I started to write, I physically, that's true, I sometimes cried that much that I couldn't sit on the chair. I went down on the floor to cry out, because I had settled myself not to think about my sorrow over my father for like 30 years. And it all came up, and I was in this struggle. I thought, I would like to ask him why, how, what did you then, how was it? You know, I had those all unanswered questions, and Mom was gone. And so there was actually the closest family to get advices from how to make it. And I was speaking to some other relatives and getting other inputs about the family story, and so the road is made while you are walking, while you're working on it. And I was very lucky to get good team, the production team here in Latvia, both the animators who believed in this project, because we were a very small crew, and I got nice editors of the film, which helped me very much around. First it was Danish editor Julia Vinten worked with me, and then Latvian editor Reinis Rinka, who worked very intensively both as an editor of the physical film and a script editor. So we managed to balance it at the end to be like this, because I have to admit that at the end the biggest art of this film is actually made by my husband, who is a producer of this film. He has made an animated film on the documentary budget. and you know, it's really madness. Yeah, we put our house on the refinancing, the mortgage to finance it. Yeah, that was the big work to make it in animation, all that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. That was very impressive. Maybe let's give the omelette.
Yeah, but I just want to say, there is this, I mentioned to you, this is the small piece in the film, when the character, and it's all true. When I wrote my essay of the finishing middle school, environmental issue was up in the day's agenda already politically. And I was then already convinced that if you want to protest against something in Soviet Union, then it's allowed to protest against the pollution in the air and everything. So that was my little piece. You know, there was a lot of things I was doing also together with Ilga, going on demonstrations for environment in our little town and so. But that was only one possibility to put it about this environment issue. In the animation, where that's true, our desks, when we were writing on the sheets of paper, they were covered by newspapers by some reason. So I put there this pipe of some factory throwing out oil all around the paper at the end to make it symbolically as a picture of the pollution of the Soviet Union, which worried us very much. And in those fragile years of teenager, we felt really much about fragility of the nature too. That was kind of part of our process of awakening.
Let me just then finalize with asking Kaspar, connecting this with what Vesna said about this one-party understanding and the importance of environment. I mean, maybe can you share with us how can Greens, what is needed in Eastern terms under your perspective for Greens or the green thinking to get stronger in those countries or in a country like Latvia, for example?
I think it's extremely complicated question, actually.
We know.
Because I completely agree with Ilse, and that's when this question arose, I thought, oh, yeah, actually it all started back in late 80s with an environmentalist movement in Soviet Union, which was the first political voice of young people. Okay, there was this older generation of dissidents, but when there were suddenly punks in the streets, you know, going in demos, that was against here in Latvia. I think it started with a plan to build a hydroelectric power station, which would have erase from Latvian landscape a very specific part of the river, which is called this river of destiny, actually, Daugava. And then after the independence, when Latvia got its own currencies, then exactly that piece of the stretch of the river Daugava was put on the 5 lots paper money, the notes, you know. So actually the Greens back then had the chance to get in the parliament, and they did. And the trouble was that what they actually did, they became extremely corrupt, and the Greens meant exactly this money note, which was green, just like dollar. And how to get back, for example, I think it's extremely hard for the Greens. And another thing for me, for example, who studied in Germany, in Berlin, in early 90s, and sure, I was this kind of student under influence of Baudrillard and critical theory and left-wing theory, way of seeing the world. When I came back, sure, any conversation where I talked about solidarity, about equal rights or welfare state, it was always, do you want to go back to socialism or to the Soviet regime? So, but I think that those days have passed. And yeah, but I don't think that's an East European problem. I think it's a very specific part of the society, but it's really small numbers who really believed, for example, that Putin's United Russia party was a left-wing party, you know, or who didn't see that corruption and exploitation of left-wing symbols in propaganda. But I would like to come back to that question about healing, which is also part of how to bring back this kind of social taisnīgums, help me, justice in political discourse in East Europe. It's about this kind of, it's part of the healing, and to my mind, what is extremely important in this process of healing is to understand that there are different, there's a huge variety of healths, that health is not something singular, or as a World Health Organization speaks about one health. One health, that means that the whole ecosystem is sharing the health. But it's not one health. Health can be different. There can be extremely healthy people in wheelchairs, or, you know, or to somehow to see that this healing is not bringing us to normality, that we don't want to, you know, we don't want, so the only thing we really don't want to become is to become normal, you know, and that's very hard to talk with the society which really would actually like to get back to the normal, you know, and by getting back to the normal, they actually become normative, and then we go back to that system. That's I think, this complicated. You know, it's hard to. I don't know whether I managed to explain.
Yes, I think you explained it very well, because I'm also being told that I need to wrap up. But I would like to maybe pick up on this. I mean, I just want to thank you very much, you Ilse, because this was a nice medicine on this healing process, yes, that it's probably being done by so many aspects. So this cultural animated film, I think it was a fantastic medicine on this, achieving this healthy state that Kaspar was saying, and that I'm sure that we are all in our different processes in the different corners of Europe. And I just want to, thank you very much, you, for well, joining us and watching this film, and the panelists, Laura, Kaspar, and Ilse. Thank you very much for this conversation. I hope that you have enjoyed it. And voila, I just invite you to the next screening of The Green Screen very soon. It's September, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I've said it right. The next screening in September. Check out our website. And again, if you have some time, enjoy the council and enjoy Riga. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for